Now that we know who's in charge in South Carolina and how they compare to other states, we can examine some of their data. Kara also interviewed Matthew Ferguson, executive director of the South Carolina Oversight Committee, who notes that the biggest factor leading to student success is the quality of a teacher. If you watched my second debunking disinformation video, then you would know that experience, aka years spent teaching, is crucial in elevating the quality of a teacher. Of course, this is backed by multiple studies. Real world experience is effective. Shocker. But getting back to what Matt says, he reveals that 6,900 teachers from the year 2020 to 2021 didn't return to a teaching position in the same district the succeeding year due to terrible work conditions. That might not seem significant at first glance, at least if you ignore the working conditions part, but allow me to explain to you how severe this actually is. So, we're going to analyze this from two different perspectives, that of a teacher and that of a student. First, teachers feel deflated. They more than likely have to acknowledge that their job sucks in multiple ways, from pay to the tools that they have to teach, which is more like a lack of tools, the restrictions on material, and even how administrators treat them. And by far the worst of all, they have to face the fact that they're leaving their precious students behind. These are students that they might have built a very close bond with. Then, when they do find a new job, they might have to travel further, spending more time away from home. They already spent a lot of time outside of work doing work. And they'd also have to adjust to a new environment. The students and the staff at the new school might have a completely different culture than the one they're used to. Secondly, students are neglected and confused. Different teachers have different teaching methods, so what worked for one student might not for another. So, when a student finds a teacher that understands their needs, and that teacher leaves because of terrible pay and terrible work conditions, then that child is essentially being left behind. New teachers have to go through the process of learning how to tend to those students' needs, wasting taxpayer money on further training. That's also assuming that these teachers will want to go through all the trouble for the low pay that they earn, and also that they even have the knowledge to know what these kids need. Spoiler alert, they don't. And in the meanwhile, these students are left with subpar education. Again, I have to emphasize how important the bond between a teacher and a student is. Students may not find it worthwhile to engage in material or in a class if they don't think their teacher is likable or relatable, even if that teacher is good or experienced in the related field. I can already foresee younger children, especially, being prone to emotional outbursts, wondering why their teacher left or when they're coming back. Let's move on from that and let's dive into their report card, their federal report card. From 2015 to 2017, they've moved down in the rankings by as much as 8 places, and it really hasn't improved much. If you were to believe Megan the Proud Trump supporter from my debunking disinformation video, where she said that America is the worst in education globally, which isn't true, by the way, I covered that in my video, South Carolina would be worse than bottom of the barrel, and Republicans have been in charge since forever. From 2007 to 2017, South Carolina went down 7 points in 8th grade math and are now 7 points behind the US average when they actually started 2 points ahead. Go ahead and pause and look at the data if you'd like. Even when they improve, like for 8th grade reading, they're still performing worse relative to the US average. This also applies to their spending, which I'll get to in a second, but for now, they were behind by 4 points in 2007, just to end up behind 5 points in 2017. They weren't kidding when they said schools are chronically underfunded in South Carolina. In 2020, South Carolina spent a measly $11,500 per student. That's $2,000 less than the US average. 7 years prior, in 2013, they spent $9,500 per student, which was only about $1,200 less than the US average. So, over time, despite spending going up in South Carolina, the gap between how much South Carolina spends and the US spends overall has only grown. And don't worry, because the same can be said for teacher salaries. For the school year of 2018 to 2019, despite teacher pay going up about $700 from the previous year, their pay went down relative to the US average. They went down one spot on the rankings, and their tiny $700 pay bump pales in comparison to the US average of over double that at $1,536. Shout out to the other states on this chart paying their teachers less than South Carolina does. Congrats, West Virginia and Arizona. Next time, we're going to look at the policies that Republicans are passing in South Carolina to make South Carolina stupid again. They aren't good.